Hi, Ms. McMullen.
Hey, Mr. Essam, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
I just finished reading that book you recommended to me,
Oh my-
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Didn't you love it? So good.
Oh, well,
What do you mean, well, what?
I don't know. It was kind of out there. I don't know. They were wizards. I don't really believe in that. They were flying. They were casting spells. It was just, I didn't really buy into it.
Oh my gosh, do you like any books any fantasy books?
What's a fantasy?
What, like books in the fantasy genre?
What's a genre?
Okay, let me remind you about genre. Genre is a category of literature with specific characteristics. Genres you may have read before might include science fiction and fantasy, fables, folklore, myths, and tall tales, historical fiction, horror or mystery, drama, realistic fiction, or humor and comedy.
Now, sometimes, even though two books may be in different genres, they can share a lot of similarities. You have to look past the genre sometimes to really get a deeper understanding of the text.
Sometimes you'll be asked to compare two texts in two different genres. In order to do that, you have to look past the genre so that you can compare the deeper elements of the text. Let's practice together by comparing Harry Potter from the fantasy genre and the biblical story of David and Goliath, a folktale that has been passed down for thousands of years. Mr. Russum, can you remind us what this story is about?
There was a war going on between two groups of people. One group was called the Israelites, and one group was called the Philistines. Now, both armies were on each side of a huge valley, and one guy from the Philistine side stepped out into the valley and he shouted out a challenge to the Israelites. And he said, instead of us all fighting each other, just send me one guy down here to fight me. And whoever wins the fight between the two of us, he'll win the whole war for his army. But Goliath was huge. He was a giant. And he had these huge weapons and all this protective armor, and the Israelites were afraid. The only person who wasn't afraid to fight him was a little boy named David. David didn't have any armor, and the only weapon that he had was a sling and 5 stones. The king tried to stop him, and the king tried to give him armor, but David said no, that he wasn't afraid. He went out to face Goliath, and he slung one of the stones, and the stone hit Goliath right in the forehead really hard. It knocked him out, and he fell down. And then David used Goliath's own sword to kill him and then chop off his head.
Okay, so then Mr. Russum, can you answer this question? How are these two stories similar and different?
Here's how I'd answer this question. First, I'd make a chart. In the left column, I'd put the 4 categories of a story that you should always compare. First, the details, the characters, the setting, and the plot. And then the big picture, the themes or messages. These categories are important for you to remember. At the end of the video, I'm going to ask you what they are. Across the top, I put the 2 texts that I'm going to compare, David and Goliath and Harry Potter. In the boxes in the middle, I write anything the 2 stories have in common. Some similarities are really obvious, like when a detail in one story is exactly the same as a detail in another story. For example, the character of David in David and Goliath is young, and the character of Harry in Harry Potter is also young. These details are exactly the same. Another similarity like that is that the character of Goliath is grown, and the character of Voldemort is grown. But other similarities are a little trickier, because the details are mostly the same, but with some differences. You should still put these in your chart. For example, the setting of David and Goliath is a war between the Israelites and the Philistines. The setting of Harry Potter is also a war, but the difference is it's between people who believe only pure blood should be wizards, and people who believe anyone with magic should be a wizard. So the part about the war is the same, but the groups involved in the war are different. Another similarity like this is in the characters. David has family in the war. It's his brothers. Harry Potter also has family in the war, but it's his parents. So these similarities have something in common, but something different. There are other similarities that are even trickier, because the details are completely different. So why do they count as similarities? Because the meaning of them in the story is the same. For example, the character of David is not a trained soldier, and the character of Harry is still a student and not a full wizard. Not being a soldier and not being a full wizard are 2 totally different things, but the meaning is the same. The meaning is neither David nor Harry is prepared to fight the person he fights. Another similarity where the details are different but the meaning is the same is in the plot. David uses Goliath's own sword to kill him, and Harry uses Voldemort's murder of his parents as protection. Remember, it turns him into a Horcrux, so when Voldemort tries to kill him, he's really hurting his own mortality. The similarity is that something that was supposed to help the strong guy win actually ends up helping the little guy win. So some similarities that go in your chart might have completely different details, but the meaning of them is the same. Once you've found the similarities in the details, in the characters, the setting, and the plot, then you're ready to look for similarities in the big picture, the themes and the messages. You use the details to see if there's any lesson or big idea that both stories are trying to teach you. Based on what we said about the characters and the plot already, I think both of these stories are teaching a lesson about how someone smaller can defeat someone bigger. And it wasn't just size. It had to do with power and training. So I'd say someone smaller, weaker, and less prepared can defeat someone larger, stronger, and more prepared. So, in the future, if you get asked to compare two stories, or if you get asked how a new story uses parts of an old story, try making a chart like this one. Now remember, I told you I would ask you, what are the 4 parts of a story that you should always compare? Go ahead, say them quietly to yourself. That's right. The characters, the setting, the plot, and the themes or messages.
All right. Now you're ready to try comparing two stories on your own. Go get 'em.